Hello, everyone. Welcome to Fate's Wide Wheel. I'm Sam Fain, and I'm here to talk about A Better Tomorrow on 4K Ultra HD from Shout Factory, as part of their Hong Kong Cinema Classics line. This, of course, is the first disc in the Trilogy box set, which is sitting right over there right now. I did an unboxing of the box set and said I would be back with the review of the film and its technical merits on 4K, as well as a little bit about the special features and just the film itself. And I am so excited to be able to talk about this film because I hadn't seen it in a very long time. And I can safely say that getting the opportunity to watch this movie again in 4K Ultra HD, to then watch some of the supplements and go through the commentaries and the interviews about the film really just broadened my perspective, not only on the movie but Hong Kong cinema, especially in the mid 80s. So, as if you couldn't already tell, I am a huge fan not only of this movie but of this particular presentation. I think Shout Factory knocked it out of the park. The 4K transfer is flawless. It is amazing. And while it might not necessarily blow you away in the same way that the hard-boiled transfer did, due to just maybe perhaps the limitations of the actual film itself, there are there are moments in the movie where it looks like it was shot yesterday, which is pretty incredible. Grain is pretty persistent throughout, resolves really nicely. Some scenes are certainly going to be a little bit grainier than others. A lot of that has to do with lighting. And I think that there's also some moments where there's a little bit of ever so slight damage to the original print. There's a couple of nicks and scratches here and there, but they are never distracting. And if anything, I can only appreciate the fact that they're there because there's not excessive DNR, there's not any sort of AI scrubbing or anything like that. The film just looks very healthy, very lifelike. The presentation is fantastic, colors are great, the overall palette looks fantastic. So I just cannot believe that we're living in a world where a 40-year-old, nearly 40-year-old film looks this good, and that we're getting a film like this with a presentation like this, which it so richly deserves. And I think that A Better Tomorrow is a film that has not been around in really any format in North America for quite a while, unless you were hanging on to an old Anchor Bay VHS or DVD, which most of that stuff is over 20 years old. So it's been a long time since we had anything like this, and we never had a presentation like this for A Better Tomorrow in the States ever. And I think that this is just, it's such a gift, for film fans, for fans of Hong Kong cinema, for fans of action cinema, for fans of John Woo, Chow Yun Fat, Leslie Chung. It's just T Long even. It's really pretty amazing that we're getting a movie like this in this presentation, and I can only just be again grateful for the fact that a deal was made for these Golden Princess catalog titles, that we're able to see them with new eyes, really, because having seen the movie on VHS, having seen the movie on what I can only imagine, as I mentioned, my unboxing was probably a bootleg DVD, this just looks phenomenal, and I will absolutely be going back to this one again. There's no doubt in my mind, and it was like I was seeing the movie for the first time. Again, it had been a while since I'd seen this movie, probably a good 20 years, but seeing it again this way, and being able to just kind of take it all in again, there's no doubt in my mind that it's a movie that I will revisit, because not only are the technical merits astounding, but the film itself is incredible. And I think, having not seen it in 20 years, having not had it burned quite into my brain the same way that a movie like Hard Boiled or The Killer was, it was a new experience, from top to bottom. And I think I appreciated elements of this film more than I could have possibly appreciated them when I was in my early 20s, or late teens. Because I think the first time I ever saw the movie, I probably would have been about 17 or 18. The last time I saw the movie, I was probably 23, 24, somewhere around there, maybe. But it's been a while. And I think when I saw it as a teenager, it's interesting because I can imagine not having enjoyed it quite as much as Hard Boiled or The Killer, because those films, I think, offer a little bit more polished version of John Woo's heroic bloodshed and bullet ballet style, et cetera, while still giving us some dynamic characters and the classic morality play. But A Better Tomorrow might in some ways be a better film from top to bottom. And I know that that might be a little bit of a hot take or a little bit of a controversial take for some, because Hardboiled and The Killer are incredible movies, there's no doubt. But A Better Tomorrow, I think there's something about it that it's not trying to be those things that Hard Boiled and The Killer kind of are in some ways. Again, they're wonderful films. I love them dearly. Again, getting to see Hard Boiled again and having already watched it twice now that I've got that 4K, uh, just in the past few weeks alone, that movie is amazing. I love it. I love everything about it. I absolutely do. But there was something that just struck me while watching A Better Tomorrow, that I felt like I was watching a movie that I didn't need the action or crave it quite as much as I feel like Hard Boiled in particular really kind of builds to those crescendos. Whereas A Better Tomorrow, the action in the film feels almost like a necessary evil, which is great because I think that that's kind of the point in some ways of the film. And that, again, I stand by what I said in my Hard Boiled review. I don't think that that film glorifies violence in the way that some people might think it does. A Better Tomorrow certainly does not. A Better Tomorrow's violence is often done in a way that shows how it lessens these people, it takes away from their humanity, even though sometimes it feels like it is just, that the reasons for it seem to be just. It's still, it has consequences, it has an impact. And obviously, it's a little bit different in Hard Boiled. We're kind of watching the heroes, right? And in A Better Tomorrow, we're watching the people who operate a little bit more in the gray. These are the outlaws, the outlaw heroes. But I think that the story of the film is really just a wonderful. And it's hard because 40 years on, it's been aped in so many ways, and even it itself was taking from earlier films. That's something that they're pretty unapologetic for. And John Woo, of course, mentions in the interview, the wonderful interview that was conducted with him, that's a supplemental feature on the included Blu-ray. But I think that there's something about the film as a whole, the way that it holds together, that even though there are these homages to other films, that there's something that is uniquely original about it. And so, just a little bit of story background. There will be some spoilers here. I'll try to keep it spoiler light, but if you haven't seen it, maybe go watch it first before you hear my thoughts. First of all, let's just talk about the actors. All right, look, Chow Yun Fat. There's no way around it. His performance in this film, and I think it's one of the reasons why I might actually rank it a little bit above Hard Boiled in some ways. His performance in this film is phenomenal. He is so good. And I think he gets so much more to kind of chew on as an actor in this film than he does in Hard Boiled, that it's fascinating to me how effortless he is in Hard Boiled, how cool he is in Hard Boiled, how heroic he is in Hard Boiled, how charming and funny he can be in Hard Boiled. But in this movie, there's a vulnerability, there's a playfulness in the early parts of the film. There's still that coolness. He is still cool. He's undoubtedly one of the coolest motherfuckers to ever walk the face of the planet, but there's something more to it. And I think that certainly, on in the second half of the film, or latter 2/3 really of the film, the portrayal of Mark by Chow Yun Fat is monumental. It's incredible. And there is a moment of confrontation between Mark and Ho, played by T Lung, that is just so good that I got choked up. And I didn't expect that to happen. I did not expect that to happen while watching A Better Tomorrow. But it moved me, and his performance moved me as a whole. Again, he still gets to be cool. He still gets to be heroic at times, but the overall sense of that cycle of success and failure and brotherhood and chivalry, and that sort of romantic brotherhood. And I don't mean romantic as in any sort of like sexual thing, or I don't know. I actually have a quibble with the idea that there's anything homoerotic whatsoever about the relationships in this film. I think it does a disservice to what um what male relationships can actually mean and be like, and the content and the gravity of those relationships, to look at these relationships between these characters as being, and having any sort of homoeroticism behind them at all. I think it demeans those relationships a little bit. If you want to read that into it, that's fine. That's your prerogative. But for me personally, there's something instead about this romantic brotherhood and this chivalry and this loyalty and honor that these characters have that goes so far beyond anything like that, that I feel like, for there to be any sort of romantic love between these characters or sexual attraction between these characters might be mistaking instead what is just genuine, true affection, and again that sort of romantic brotherhood, and I mean it in that romanticized way of kind of being able to look at something through a filter that yeah, it's love in a very pure, distilled way. It's love without lust. It's love without those other things. And I think that obviously with Ho and Mark, there is a lot of that. They are brothers, right? Which makes the relationship between Ho and Kit, played by Leslie Chung, which this is one of his first films. He was a pop star before this, and this young, beautiful Leslie Chung, just magnetic and so much fun to watch. Does a wonderful job as Kit, and T Long obviously brings so much to the role of Ho as well. And I think that again, one of the things that makes this film work is that the relationship between all three of these people, and really the fulcrum for the relationships is T Long's Ho, and his actual brotherhood relationship with Kit, played by Leslie Chung, and then this chosen brotherhood with Mark, played by Chow Yun Fat. And it's interesting because while T Long and Leslie Chung are great in this film, Chow Yun Fat is, I mean, he is the guy. He's you cannot take your eyes off of him. You will, if you're one of those people that has your phone in your hand when you're watching a movie or anything, you will put down your phone when he is on the screen. He's so magnetic, and his performance is so authentic and so alive. So much possibility, so much playfulness, so much danger. There's just so much that goes into every moment, and it feels so honest and so raw. There's a rawness to him. And I think that it's so interesting to see a character kind of deconstructed. Oftentimes, we're so used to, especially with Western audiences, I feel like we're used to seeing a character kind of start off at a low point and then gradually sort of climb higher as the film works towards a climax. And with the character of Mark, that is not the case at all. Interesting to note, of course, that prior to this, Chow Yun Fat had some fame due to television appearances, The Good, the Bad, the Ugly, not anything at all like the Western with Clint Eastwood, but it was a Hong Kong television program that he was involved in. So he was a known quantity, but at this point in his career, he was considered box office poison. He was not a movie star by any stretch. He was not someone who had a great deal of fame, or he wasn't an icon by any means at all. And then this film put him on the map. This film secured his future, basically. It turned him into an icon, and it put him on a path towards being an international presence, which, he would obviously kind of become with his turn in Hollywood films as well, and crossover films like Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. But this film, and again, just based off of everything I've already said about his performance in this movie, it put him on the map. It turned him into a star. He was bankable. You could put him in your movie and people would come to see it. He won the Hong Kong Film Awards Best Actor award for this film, and it was so richly deserved. I mean, I say that without actually knowing the other the other films that were up there, but like, I cannot imagine any of the other performances just matching the gravitas and the rawness and the vulnerability and the charisma, the magnetism that he was able to pull off with this film. And while that innate charisma is evident in other films of his that I have seen, there's something about the rawness, the vulnerability of him in this particular performance that I just absolutely loved. T Long, interesting career. He had actually had a number of starring roles in Shaw Brothers pictures in the 70s in particular, with a combination of martial arts films and wuxia films, mostly martial arts films, but there are a few wuxia films in there as well. And was someone that, again, was also kind of on a bit of a downward slope. Like, he was no longer a bankable box office star. At one point he was a box office star. There's a great box set, again, that Shout Factory put out, that I will certainly, crack open for the channel at some point. We'll talk about, but this box set, filled with 12 films with T Long and David Chang. But yeah, I think that at this particular point in his career, he was kind of, a bit on a downswing, and this certainly helped to put him back, kind of in the upper echelon. And then with Leslie Chung, again, a pop star, someone who was not a proven commodity at all when it came to film. And this, again, was really a part of his breakthrough. And what a fascinating presence, what an interesting star Leslie Chung was. And unfortunately, he's no longer with us, and he took his own life in 2003. But really, really interesting human, somebody worth doing a quick wiki on if you're interested. Other films of his include Chinese Ghost Story, which I have behind me. We'll definitely crack into at some point. Farewell, My Concubine, which Criterion did an incredible 4K of also. So again, those three really are kind of the nexus of the film, and are just so wonderful in it. And I really privileged again to kind of get a look at the film in this way. Definitely don't want to leave out Emily Chu, who plays Jackie, Kit's girlfriend. She's really great in the film as well. There's a couple of very humorous moments with her. There's also some really wonderful, like, sort of domestic drama, melodrama moments between her and Kit, between her and Ho. She's even involved in one of the fight scenes, and I love that she has some agency here. I love that she senses not only naturally the fracture in the relationship between Ho and Kit, because of course Ho is a gangster, Kit is a police officer, and this is a spoiler, after their father is murdered, Kit blames Ho for that, and it's during that attack on Kit and Ho's father that Jackie kind of tries to come to their aid as well. But she senses the fractures in this relationship. She wants to try to bring them back together. She was also close with Kit and Ho's father because she was helping to take care of him. So she just gets some really wonderful stuff to do in the film as well. And I think it's really nice to see someone get, run the gamut of kind of humor, compassion. She stands up for herself a number of times. The romantic and domestic drama between her and Kit on a couple of occasions. It is a great role, and it could easily have just been a throwaway, but I think due to the writing and the crafting of the film by John Woo and his co-writers, and then the portrayal by Emily Chu, Jackie kind of stands out. Wisely Lee, who plays Xing, just the most awful, ruthless gangster. He's horrible, and when he gets his comeuppance, you're glad. But really, really, really interesting character, great portrayal, and I think that again just really adds to the texture of the film. So. The story is wonderful. The cinematography is great. I love how Hong Kong itself is a character in this film. You really get to see the city from so many different angles. You're seeing, shiny corporate office buildings. You're seeing dirty alleyways. You're seeing, neon flashing. You're seeing the mountains. You're seeing the docks, and you're seeing the ocean. You're seeing so many aspects of the city over the course of this 93 minutes, because that's the other thing. It's a tight film. A lot gets packed into those 93 minutes. There's no wasted. There's an economy to the film. The editing of the film is done so well, and I think that there, all of the themes that play out in the film, some of them are razor sharp, some of them are blunt and hit you right in the face, but again, their presence, I think, is something that I really appreciate, because it takes what could be seen as sort of this quasi melodrama gangster action film and bumps it up a notch. And like I said, those themes of filial duty, chosen family, betrayal, revenge, honor, nobility, good and evil, it's all there. And it's looked at from so many different facets just due to the nature of the relationships of these characters. And I think that that's one of the things that really I ultimately take away from the film as a character piece, because it really is a film about human beings and the nature of their relationships to one another, and the lengths to which they're willing to go to either have their freedom, to get their revenge, to uphold justice. I think that that's a word that I haven't used enough yet. Justice, that sense of justice that pervades the film, and the ways that justice might not always be what you expect it to be. And that's so true for the character of Kit. Kit's a police officer, and he's young, and there's a naivete to him that Leslie Chung captures so well. And yet there's it goes beyond being eager. There's this like driving force within him that says that I will see justice. And by the end of the film, I think his sense of justice has absolutely shifted. and what is necessary justice, and what is my role to play in this version of a just society. And we see that play out with the character of Mark, as played by Chow Yun Fat as well, and of course with Ho, played by T Long. There's some really wonderful scenes with T Long in particular at the taxi cab service. He really has some incredible moments of just, you see someone who is not only ready to go straight, if you will, but is doing it, is actively doing it, is not even tempted to go back. And that it is, again, this sense of honor, and duty to his brother, to his family, to Chow Yun Fat, to, there's that duty that kind of ends up pulling him back in a way. And yet, even in all of this, he is seeking to do the right thing as well. And so I think it's interesting just seeing the parallels between Ho and Kit. I could go on and on and on and on. I don't want to labor the point too much, just to say that it's a brilliant film. I really love this movie. I think John Woo just knocks it out of the park, directing and writing. Of course, he had some co-writers as well. Chui Hark, who produced the film, took the chance on John Woo, brought the project to John Woo, because initially he was, he had an idea for the film. Basically, it was a I don't want to say remake, but it was heavily inspired by the story of a discharged prisoner, which is a 1967 Hong Kong film. And when John Woo initially got the film, he says this in his interview, he felt it was kind of flat. He felt like it needed more. And so he was able to, beef things up a little bit and add in the character of Mark, expand the role of Mark, the relationship, obviously with Kit, and just really kind of flesh things out in a way that took it beyond this sort of like, what could have been sort of a flat remake, and turned it into something that felt very different. I will say a couple of things about the action, and then I'll move on to the supplemental features. So obviously the action in this film is very stylized, and it uses a lot of what we've come to know as sort of that bullet ballet, the notion of these scenes being, choreographed, like a dance. It's not just, man pulls gun, man fires trigger, or did I? Man pulls trigger, man fires gun. Anyway, instead, it is very much, there's this sense of movement, and the way that, that you're holding a gun, the way that you move a gun, that the firing, a gun in each hand, the double, kind of two gun approach, all of that. It's interesting because John Woo clearly was drawing from a filmmaker like Sam Peckinpah, while also drawing from Chang Che with wuxia films, and that of course he had even tried his hand at a couple of, including Last Hurrah for Chivalry, for instance, which has a lot of common themes, honestly, with some of his, the notions of brotherhood and chivalry. And those scenes are, again, they're very different from a lot of gunplay that we see in other action movies up to this point. And he went on to really influence the entire genre with A Better Tomorrow, and the way things really shifted and changed. And we would see other directors, of course, in Hong Kong, like Ringo Lam or Chui Hark himself, obviously directors in the West, like Quentin Tarantino, obviously, Tony Scott. Like, there were a number of directors that had clearly picked up on some of these things, and it would become very pervasive. And that idea that it is kind of a ballet, that it is a martial art, that the idea that a handgun is synonymous with a sword, with a bladed weapon for John Woo. And I think that the language that he kind of invents, or at least establishes, I won't necessarily give him wholesale credit. I don't feel like I can do that, but it certainly establishes with this film, is something that we're very familiar with these days. Fans of action cinema are certainly familiar with. So it certainly revolutionized things. And I think that a couple of the scenes in particular, when Mark goes to take out the gang leader that betrayed Ho, although that betrayal runs a lot deeper than I think even he expects, that scene is just out of this world. And again, there's something very cool about it, sure, but there are consequences. There are heavy consequences to this scene. And I, for one, when I watch these scenes, I'm not like, yeah, get him. It doesn't feel cool to me. It's very much like, this is intense. This is a lot, but it feels very integral to the story, and it feels integral to who these people are. And I think that that's also part of the commentary. So yeah, again, it's a great film. I highly recommend it. If you haven't seen it, and hopefully I haven't spoiled things too much, go see this movie. pick up the Shout Factory 4K Ultra HD Blu-ray. The supplemental features are fantastic. The audio commentary with James Mudge is great. There is no dead air, and he is so informative. Gives you so much context for the Hong Kong cinema scene at that particular time, both the studios, the major players, where the actors, producers, directors, writers, where they were at, kind of other names that might have been important. There's also a lot of societal and cultural information that helps to kind of set the stage for why a film like this might have spoken to audiences, why it would have been such a huge box office success, why it would have been such a huge critical success in Hong Kong in the time in which it was released in 1986. So a lot of fascinating information, of course, wonderful information about all the players in the film, moments in the film, shots in the film, the script, etc. Just a wonderful audio commentary, knocks it out of the park, undoubtedly. The John Woo interview is splendid. It is amazing. The frankness, the humility. I mean, just what a wonderful interview. It is a must watch. I think that while the audio commentary is phenomenal and I absolutely loved it, if I had to recommend one special feature in particular to check out, it's the John Woo interview. It's amazing. He covers pretty much all aspects. It runs for about 34 minutes, and it's just great. And the amount of credit he gives to Chewy Hark for for taking a chance on him, not just for the success of this film of A Better Tomorrow, but just for the success of his own career, is pretty remarkable, and obviously is I think worth noting. And of course, Chewy Hark is in the film as well. He plays one of the judges early on when Jackie goes to audition. And then John Woo, of course, is in the film as well. He plays the Taiwanese detective who's searching for Ho, and Mark as well. And so, yeah, just really, really great feature. The interview with Terrence Chang, fantastic. You learn a little bit more about him and kind of where he was at and how he approached this, and how he went to NYU Film School, but he wanted to go back to Hong Kong. He wanted to be involved in film there. Just some excellent information. The When Tomorrow Comes with Chen Hing Ka is also really, really great. You actually get to see the script. The screenplay for Better Tomorrow, and it's so cool to see a screenplay in another language, especially a language that uses characters like that. But yeah, it was really, really cool to see that. The Gordon Chan interview, also really, really well done, and then a little bit shorter. That one I think is like 7 minutes or so. The Gareth Evans interview actually runs for about 23 minutes, and it's really cool. There was something about it that I really connected with because it reminded me a lot of my story and my kind of exposure to these films. I have a feeling that he and I are probably similar age. Just like the idea that Hard Boiled kind of introduced him to all of this as well, although in a different way than it did me. I actually saw like a VHS sitting in a rental store. I took it home, watched it. He actually saw a clip of the film on like an MTV documentary or something, which is fascinating to me. But yeah, very, very cool. And then the Hong Kong Confidential with Grady Hendrix. Grady is very erudite. Again, just very clear, very concise, great stories. If you've already seen all the other supplemental features, there will be a little bit of rehashing, but again, his presentation is fantastic and totally worth checking out. So you also, of course, get the trailers and image gallery. This is phenomenal. And if the other two films hold up in the same way, which I am sure they will, then that box set is absolutely worth it. I cannot recommend it highly enough. I will say one small technical note. My Panasonic UB8 4K player did have trouble playing the Blu-ray. The 4K Ultra HD, no problems whatsoever, played amazingly. Again, looked phenomenal on my OLED, like absolutely stellar picture. But the Blu-ray, for some reason, I couldn't actually get it to play. So I put it in my Region Free player, dedicated Blu-ray player that I have, and it was totally fine. So I don't know if the UB820 was just being a little cranky or what. But it was, I will say that just kind of spot checking the Blu-ray versus the 4K. Sometimes, my wife is like this too. She's like, do you really notice the difference? Yes, you notice the difference. The 4K print of this film on the 4K Ultra HD blows everything on the Blu-ray out of the water. It is so good. I did not listen to the English dub at all. I've heard the dub before. The first time I ever saw the movie, I believe it was dubbed, but I imagine it sounds great. I did listen to it with the Cantonese soundtrack. Of course, with these films, Hong Kong, the overdubbing was always done. They were shot usually without sound, and then ADR later. But that said, what an incredible film, what an incredible presentation. I feel so lucky. The fact that The Killer comes out in a little over a week, I can't wait. I mean, I'm going to be able to own in 4K Ultra HD the Better Tomorrow trilogy, Hard Boiled, and The Killer, and get to talk about them on this channel. It's awesome. So anyway, I'm going to get out of here. I will be bringing you episodes on A Better Tomorrow 2 and A Better Tomorrow 3 very, very soon, hopefully within the next few days. I try and keep them a little bit shorter maybe, but this one, again, it's such an important film in Hong Kong cinema and action cinema and cinema in general. It is really, really just a wonderful film, and I cannot recommend it highly enough, and I cannot recommend this specific version of it highly enough. I know Arrow is doing one in the UK, so for those of you that are region B and you're holding off, I totally understand that. It'll be very interesting to see what Arrow does with the film. Obviously, the transfer will likely be the same transfer, but special features will probably be different, maybe different. We'll see. So it could end up being a double dip for me. Don't tell my wife. But anyway, just such a wonderful presentation, amazing film. Again, Shout Factory really, really nailed this one. And I can't wait to watch it again. I can't wait to dig into the other two. So stay tuned again for episodes about those, as well as my retro unboxing of Star Trek, the motion picture, for my dear friend Albie's GoFundMe for his daughter's trip to space camp, which you can find out more about just by hopping over to the Trek Exploration podcast or the Quantum Leap podcast, any number of podcast channels. But anyway, yeah, there's also some other exciting stuff that I picked up recently. I got the Shinobi box set from Radiance Films, which I'm very excited about looking into. This is the first one. I have the second one as well, but this one was out of print, and I lucked out on an eBay auction and got this dirt cheap, so I'm very excited about that. I also have in this box right here something very special that I will be unboxing soon on the channel, and I cannot wait to do it. There's something in here that I am super excited about. It's something that's been out of print for a while, but I got one. It's sealed. It's brand new. Got a little bit of box damage, which is too bad, but I can't wait to share this with you. We're going to take a look at it. I think I'm going to have my friend JJ Lindell come back on the show, and we're going to talk about this one. So leaving that in the box for now. Anyway, that is all I have for you now. So in the meantime, take care of yourselves, take care of one another, stay safe out there, and always, always leap responsibly.